Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Soulution Live Show. I'm your host, Jody Almond, and I'm excited to be with you this morning, as always, because this is the show where we take you from struggle to success in your life, moving you out of that area and into the life that you desire. Not the life you just live, but one that you can absolutely love. And that's what I want for you, whether it's your personal life or your professional life. You know, this week I've been thinking, and I've realized that for years I told people that I wasn't very imaginative. Now, I remember as a child that I would go out in the yard with my friends, or when we would have recess during school, we would go outside and we would grab a stick and we would be cowboys and Indians, or, we would go outside and we would play, cops and robbers. And, I don't know if kids even play these things anymore, but that's the kind of games we played when I was growing up. I remember laying a blanket out in the yard, and that was our wrestling mat. And we would play like we were professional wrestlers. And we would go out there and, even though we didn't have ropes and corners and all this stuff, we imagined they were there, and we would do all those things. I find sometimes as we grow older, our imagination leaves us. And what used to aggravate me, if I'm being totally realistic and transparent with you today, is I would watch my wife and I would watch my kids, and they would be so creative and so imaginative, and they could see a box, and in their mind they saw a clubhouse and all these things. And somewhere along the line, I felt like I had lost my creativity, my imagination. But then I began to realize several years ago that God said that we're created in his likeness and his image. And my friend, when we go back to Genesis, when you think about it, everything that God created in 6 days of creation came from his imagination. He thought of it before he began working on it. And what I find is that, if we're created in God's likeness and his image, he made us to be creators as well. And not just in the form of creating and reproducing children, but he created us to create. We are meant to create. And when we find our creative flow, when we begin to find our creative genius and begin to imagine again, then we can begin to see things take place in our lives that we never imagined, right? Even though we imagine it, we never imagine it. As a matter of fact, the Bible has a lot to say about the imagination. Again, God created from imagination. But then if you go to the New Testament, it says, your eye has not seen, your ear has not heard, and neither has it entered into the heart of man. That's your imagination. You can't even imagine what God has in store for you. So here's what I want to encourage you, because in that process of me finding my imagination, we went to Disney World. It's been about 6 years ago now, roughly 5 to 6 years ago. We went down to Disney, and Walt Disney had a huge imagination. And as a matter of fact, a lot of his concepts have the word imagination in it, and even his cartoonist, his artists are called Imagineers, right? And so the thing is that imagination can cause somebody that is in a studio, bankrupt, homeless, with a mouse running around their studio to create something called Mickey Mouse. Who would have ever imagined that Mickey Mouse would have turned into a theme park? You see, you don't realize what your imagination can take you to. You don't realize how great your imagination can become in this world, and how much of an impact. How many families go to Disneyland or Disney World to get just a magical place, right? Why is it magical? Because it is birthed from people's imaginations. And what I want to encourage you is, what I began to find is I do not create the same way my wife does. I don't create the same way my children do. I don't create the same way Walt Disney did. But I have my own creative genius. Again, I am now an Amazon #1 best-selling author. Why? Because of my imagination and being able to write out a story. Even though it was a realistic story, I put in the way it flowed for me, and that came from my creative juices. You know what else? I create stuff online all the time. I'm creating this right here for you. Why? Because it comes from my creative flow. It comes from my creative juices, my imaginative juices. Now, with all of that being said, the reason we have apps today, the reason we have cell phones, flat screen TVs, cars that can do all these extra things that cars were never meant to do, even the car. Henry Ford said, people were rejectful of the car because of the fact that they wanted to still use a horse and buggy, but when they realized how quickly they could get somewhere, they jumped on board with a vehicle. You see, Henry Ford looked at a horse and buggy and he imagined a car. He imagined something that had horsepower instead of horses, but in the form of an engine. And Henry Ford created the vehicle. You see, the thing is that we have the ability to create, my friend. And if you're not creating, you're robbing yourself and robbing the world of the greatness that is inside of you. And so I want to empower you today. Find a way to create. Can you draw? Draw. Can you paint? Paint. Can you compose music? Compose it. Can you write? Write. What is it you can do? You say, Jody, I don't know. Begin to figure it out. Begin to find what you enjoy. You see, I love technology. I love those kinds of things. So I began to realize I could create digital products. I can create digital resources. I can create digital concepts. I can create those things. I've created my whole life, but just never thought about it in the right sense. I created sermons and teachings for the majority of the last 20 years. I've created those things. I've created stories and concepts to tell people. I've created things online and didn't even look at it in that light. I looked at it as more of, I was doing this for a purpose, not necessarily to create. But then I began to realize, why did I spend hours creating certain things? Because I loved it, because I didn't mind it. So find your creative genius, find your creative flow, and begin to let your imagination run wild. And whatever you can imagine, I believe you can do. I believe you can do. If you can imagine it, you can do it. Years ago, they would have said, you can't watch TV anywhere. Now we can turn on our phone and watch television anywhere. Now we can talk to somebody anywhere. I imagine that before it's over with, we won't even need the phone. There'll be some kind of way we can do it without a phone. It'll be a hieroglyphic or something that pops up in front of one of our eyes, and we can talk or see or communicate in some way. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting Star Trek-y, but you know what? That's what imagination does. People watch things like Star Trek and Star Wars and sci-fi movies, and they say, is that possible? And some things I believe we do cross a boundary, but other things I believe is very advantageous to the world. And so today, my friend, here's my challenge to you. Here's my challenge for you today. Are you tapping into your imagination? Because if God created everything from his imagination, then why shouldn't we use our imagination to begin creating? He called us to be in his likeness and his image. He called us to be creators. So let's go create. What can you create today? That's my question. What can you create that can change somebody's life, change your life, and change the world? You said, Jody, I don't know if I have that creativeness. You do have it. You just have to tap into it. You have to tap into that inner child in you and bring it back forth. The same child that would play baby dolls in the floor for hours or play cops and robbers in the yard for hours. The same child that could imagine that her stuffed animals or his toys were talking to him. That same child, bring that creative juice back to flow. Bring it back out of you and begin to watch what you create. My friend, today I want to see you do great things in this life. I want to see you go from struggle to success. And you know what? Sometimes it takes imagination to do that. And I want to see you engage your imagination. So until we talk again, my friend, know as always, I want you to be blessed. And I'm always, always praying for your success. Have a great day.